Jamie, as he's called, James Smoke, and his wife and her son were traveling back from Nashville to their home. They had their 1-year-old dog, General Patton, and a 2.5-month-old puppy in the car as well. In the process of getting gas, Jamie Smoke put his wallet up on top of the car. And they head back out onto the interstate, and as they're going down the interstate, the wallet flies off. Money that was in the wallet, some $400 or something, flies over the interstate. Someone sees that, calls the police, and says there's a car with money flying out of the windows that's going fast. One dispatcher says one thing, another says another, until they're sending out a bolo saying, look for this green station wagon with South Carolina plates on it that was involved in an armed robbery.
Driver, take the keys out and this is going on the parked pavement. Passenger, exit the vehicle, your hands in the air.
All these officers get out with their assault weapons, their shotguns, their handguns. They're all on the ground, on their knees, telling the officers to please shut the doors so the dogs won't get out. They're afraid they're going to get in traffic and get hit.
I got a dog in the car, I don't want to jump out though.
Naturally, the dog wants to be with his owners. He hops out the door, runs sort of in a circular fashion trying to get to the master, wagging his tail, not being aggressive. And one of the Cookeville police officers, Eric Hall, takes his shotgun and simply shoots the dog.
Hundreds of dog owners who, haven't committed any crime and really aren't even suspected of any crime. People who, never would have thought that they would have been subject to police violence for any reason are finding that their dogs have been, killed oftentimes right in front of them with no consequences or repercussions for the officers who killed the dog.
I'm an administrator and contributor for the Facebook page Dogs Shot by Police. There are several shootings reported every week.
This is something that happens pretty regularly and that goes beneath the radar. Most people aren't even aware of this. Police officers killing family pets because the pet was in the way or posed a threat or barked most of the time. This happens all the time, and it doesn't, and that's not hysteria. That's true, and it gets very little attention.
Every single part of Lily was beautiful. One spring, she was following me as I was doing some gardening, and I turned and her mouth was like, I said, Lily, what do you have in your mouth? And she spit out this baby bird. It wasn't dead, it wasn't hurt. And she was nosing around in the leaves, and all I can figure is she was trying to find a place to put it.
Going to a shelter is always a bittersweet thing because there's so many dogs that want to be rescued. I remember coming across Peyton all alone in a corner kennel, and I just remember yelling out to Trinity, we're done. I found him. Peyton was the gregarious, loving, fearless lead dog, and Chase was a little more timid. He definitely hid behind his brother if there was ever danger.
And you could tell her, you say, Jane, go say your prayers. And she would run over to either a bench or a chair and just put her paws up on it.
She was just playful, friendly, and all the kids in the neighborhood loved her.
She loves playing in the snow. You get snow on the ground, she'll take her nose and just dive into it, and she'll lay out there for hours in the snow, rolling around like a pig in its swell.
Chloe enjoyed apples. Cut a slice off for her and one for me, and if I took 2 slices, she just kind of give me a look like, hey, that one was mine.
Ava was like my 4th daughter. We'd call her the foot warmer. She'd lay at your feet and was just a very, very sweet, gentle dog.
He was a really good Frisbee dog. That was kind of what he enjoyed to do. So we were back here throwing the Frisbee and just kind of Not really doing a whole lot of anything that day. Normally he would follow me everywhere that I go, but he was kind of preoccupied with this little bone he was chewing on. So he stayed behind in the yard when I walked out to the truck.
Austin 911, do you need police, fire, or EMS?
Police. There's a gentleman that looks like he's really drunk and a woman trying to get away from him.
Which one is it going to be? I got an A, B, and C.
It's not noted in the callers if I'm standing outside.
I was upstairs nursing George.
I got home a little early in order to take them for a walk.
After receiving harassing phone calls, the person was going to come to my house, so I had called the police.
I came out and I walked down the steps and I see Mark herding Gracie and Lily into the backyard. And that's when I realized there's someone on the driveway.
On October the 10th, there was a knock at my door.
I was awakened by a loud banging on the door.
My niece and nephew and brother were in town, and my niece accidentally called 911. As I opened the door,
there was a black SUV that parked on the wrong side of the road, running with no one in the driver's seat. And I remember seeing that, thinking, it seems strange.
And he says, I'm looking for Jared Jenkins. And I said to him, he doesn't live here. Let me put the dogs away.
And it was my son's probation officer. And when I walked outside, my dog ran down past me, Patches, and I'm standing here and I'm saying, don't worry, she's not gonna bite, she's not gonna bite.
I noticed the street was blocked off. There was police cars all over, and there was a crowd of people all around the house.
I heard my mother-in-law cry out, "Shy, I think it's SWAT."
I saw somebody out of the corner of my eye, and it was a police officer coming down the driveway. As soon as I saw him, he pulled his gun, told me to freeze. Get your hands, show me your hands, show me your hands.
Show me your hands! Show me your hands!
And he had the gun just like right there.
Men in black wearing helmets and shields. They had just jumped my fence and were sort of surrounding my house.
I noticed that 2 police officers were down there with their backs to me. As soon as she got right here,
An explosion. It was the sound of men knocking down my front door with a battering ram.
And I'm saying, oh my God, please don't hurt my babies. And I'm walking up to him. And he turns with his gun and he fires it. Bam!
Immediate gunfire. Bam, 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 bam.
I discharged my firearm.
I fired one shot into the dog's head.
He was like, get your dog, jump back, and just shot him straight in the back.
pulled out his gun and shot her right in the head, right there.
And he says, well, we had to terminate her. I said, why? And he said, because she's a vicious dog. And I told him, Chloe?
Peyton was laying still in an enormous pool of his own blood. I would later learn that Chase had been shot from behind with an MP5 submachine gun.
And she laid down back there on the ground, and I was just crying, saying, he shot my dog, he shot my dog.
My main concern was to stop the bleeding so that, you know, she wouldn't bleed to death right there in front of me.
And I'm holding her and saying, please, Lily, don't die. God, please don't let my baby die.
He walked down this side of the car just saying, ma'am, I had to do it. Ma'am, I had to do it.
I told her everything's gonna be all right, and by that time, Patches had died.
Over the years, law enforcement departments have received a lot of training on how to assault a drug house. And one of the things that they were taught in that training was there are sometimes these highly trained attack dogs that the drug dealers train to be killer attack dogs. And so law enforcement officers were told back then, shoot the drug dogs and then go into the house. And we discovered that perhaps over the years, the police departments had developed an attitude that one of the ways that you handle a dog encounter is to shoot the dog. When in fact, the vast majority of the dog shootings by law enforcement have been just family pets in neighborhood settings that are not drug houses.
They're told of the one odd incident out of millions and millions of interactions where an officer is bitten and harmed by a dog. And then those very rare, very unusual circumstances form the basis of their training.
City of Binghamton says an increasing number of drug dealers own pit bulls they use to attack police. The city council is now looking to stop it.
And it's really fear-driven training instead of reality-based training. And so what you have is severe overreaction to everyday normal situations, like a dog bounding out to greet someone on its property.
It wasn't like it was new. It wasn't like we were unique. We were routine.
The DC police shot my neighbor's dog because it barked at them. My neighbors aren't running a drug ring. They don't have dog fights in their basement. I mean, my neighbors are two retired diplomats.
It does definitely seem to be happening more often, and I think it's sort of consistent with a trend toward more police militarization and sort of a more us versus them kind of mindset.
Whoever's downstairs, just remember, if you have to shoot those dogs, leave her and I'll be out back at the corner. Same thing for upstairs.
In the 1970s, there were about 200 or 300 of these SWAT raids every year, and by 2005, we're up to about 50,000 SWAT raids per year.
Police search warrant! Police search warrant!
When you sort of outfit them in military gear, when you give them military weapons, when you train them in military tactics, and then you send them out and tell them they're fighting a war, that has a very real sort of effect on their mindsets. The dog really isn't seen as, part of a family, as a family would see the dog. And so dogs are sort of just collateral damage in all of this.
After World War II and the 50s, as people became more economically mobile, they became more geographically mobile as well. So they went to college in a different state, or they took the job in New York. As a result, you've seen this absolute skyrocketing of pet ownership in this country. People who are lonely in the city, so they'll get a dog to keep them happy. And you've got the folks back home who feel empty nested, so they then get a dog to fill the void of a child leaving or something like that. And it is in fact the case these days that more households have dogs in them than have children. 83 million dogs in America right now. We've seen dogs especially move from the barnyard to the backyard to the bedroom. In fact, my organization has a little card we send out to legislators that says 62% of your constituents are sleeping with our clients, and has a photograph of a couple with a dog lying in their bed. At the same time, you have this increase in the militarization of police forces and law enforcement officers bursting into people's homes. So you've got more animals in people's homes and more law enforcement officers entering people's homes. That's bound for disaster.
Increasingly, we're finding stories about police that are killing dogs, not just in drug raids, but also just visiting houses to talk about reports of burglaries or a prowler in the area. People have accidentally set off their own burglar alarm, and when a police officer comes to investigate, the dog gets shot, or cases where a dog gets out or loose in a neighborhood where they used to call the dog catcher or animal control, or just take the dog back to its owner. We're seeing police officers just pulling out their gun and shooting the dog.
When you've got the situation where a mayor of a town can have his own dog shot in his own home by the local police force, that just shows you that this truly can happen to absolutely anybody.
Mr. Calvo looked at me and said, I just want to let you know that I'm the mayor of Berwyn Heights.
What was your reaction when you heard that?
I didn't know what to say. I was shocked.
Okay. And why were you shocked?
Because it was the mayor of Berwyn Heights, and I couldn't believe it.
And why couldn't you believe it?
Thought maybe somebody would know that.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent the last 8 months filming with the Gwinnett County Sheriff's K-9 unit.
Boy, good boy. That's his alert is to sit. So we'll search the car.
So he alerted to the pot?
Yeah, to the odor.
To the odor
of the narcotics.
Okay. Go. I've never witnessed any officer shooting a dog, but I still think dogs are being shot needlessly.
It's the most frustrating part right here.
Officers who don't understand dogs, they're just scared of them. And who wouldn't be?
Police department.
When you got an 80-pound dog charging at you.
Police department, is anybody home?
You don't know what that dog's going to do to you.
We got to think about life, death, family, that fast.
Off, dog! Get the dog! Get the dog! Hey, what? Are you back in the house? Get on the ground! You just saw Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
Even the bad guys have a canine team, just as much as the police officers do.
Benjamin's coming out, so if you don't want to get bitten, you better get out of here.
We are taught the person is the threat. Hands, that's what can kill you, is a person or their hands. So when you have something, you're dealing with a situation and you have an animal charging at you, you don't have time to take your eyes and attention off of the threat or the person that could shoot you or kill you or whatever, to look at this dog and go, okay, is he just running up to me because he wants to play? Or is he gonna come up and chew my leg off?
I see you, buddy. What are you doing, huh?
We have learned that police have opened fire on 92 dogs since 2011.
Because of the lack of nationwide data, it's very difficult to compare city police departments to Buffalo's average of 24 per year. After requesting Cincinnati Police's use of force records, they've reported shooting an average of only 7 dogs per year since 2011. The New York City Police Department self-reports shooting 36 dogs per year from 2011 to 2012, and the Los Angeles Police shot only 21 dogs per year from 2009 to 2013. But numbers larger than Buffalo have surfaced periodically, like in Milwaukee and Chicago.
It's really difficult to say how often these incidents happen, because it's not something that police officers are usually obligated to report.
There is no report. There's no one out there taking statistics. Oh, I shot a deer, or I shot a dog, or I shot a cat, or I shot whatever. There's nothing on that on animals. On people, it's a whole nother story.
When you learned after the Calvo shooting that there had been 8, including Calvo, dog shootings in the previous 4 years, were you concerned about it or otherwise raise any red flags with you in terms of your management of the agency?
Objection. Raise flags in terms of my management of the agency?
Sure. If 8 dogs were killed or wounded by gunfire in a 4-year period of time, do you find that to be a normal occurrence or incidence of the killing of dogs by a law enforcement agency?
Objection. You may answer the question. I have no idea if that's a normal occurrence for an agency.
How common is it for police officers to shoot people's dogs? Well, the U.S. Department of Justice has declared this to be an actual epidemic. And the estimate they come up with is 10,000 dogs being shot by law enforcement officers every year. When you break that down, that's just over 1 dog being shot every single hour of every single day of every single year.
The vast majority of the time, doing absolutely nothing, completely ignoring that animal is the very best thing to do. And there's never going to be a statistic that's created that says a deputy showed up and made this contact, made an arrest, for example, and oh, by the way, there was a dog there and the dog didn't get shot.
A lot of police officers just automatically jump to conclusions when you have some of the so-called aggressive breeds. Pit bulls are not mean dogs. Because they are such a loyal breed, they will do anything and everything for their owner. And unfortunately, that's why they do so well as fighting dogs.
It's really hurt people's image, understanding of pit bulls, which is really a shame. It's a really nice breed. And it's been destroyed in the public mind by a small group of creepy, dumb people who've tortured them to make them violent.
A pit bull viciously attacked officers. A pit bull was lunging at the officer. Pit bull, pit bull, pit bull. And it's there to inspire some of the public sentiment of the fact that they were justified in these shoots.
You think I'm gonna let some dog try to bite me, trying to kick him? He was a pit bull.
Oh, he's a pit bull. What if he was another dog running at you?
Unfortunately, media has compounded the fear people have of pit bulls and pit bull types and other bully breeds. But unfortunately, people have also fed into that fear. Owners who use these dogs as deadly weapons, who train these dogs to be aggressive. And then you do have a dog that has more of that ability to aggress.
Middletown police charged those 6 people from 2 homes during a drug raid yesterday on Manchester Street. Officers also shot a pit bull during this, and they confiscated crack cocaine and heroin during the raids.
Police officers may be viewing these dogs as mere weapons that need to be stopped, but in actual fact, more likely those dogs themselves are victims of crime and abuse that didn't just come out of the chute being willing to be aggressive and attack human beings. They had to be beaten in order to make them that way. We need to focus more on the crimes that are being done to these dogs and abuse they suffer, and actually truly viewing them as victims themselves.
She never showed any kind of aggression.
I don't think Jane ever met a dog that she didn't like, or a cat, or anything.
With any dog, but especially dogs that are deemed to be more aggressive or vicious, is that you really want to socialize them as young puppies, and so we were really big about socializing her.
She wasn't a mean or vicious dog whatsoever. You know, her best friend was my niece, and at the time Chloe was shot, my niece was 4 years old. Most dogs, they hear a noise outside, they'd run out first and see what was going on. Not her. She was a big, scaredy cat.
Ava was the family dog. She was my daughter. Everybody loved Ava. She was always around people and kids, and there was never any problem. She had a rawhide bone in her mouth when she was shot.
I've had people tell me, I'd rather be shot, I'd rather be stabbed, I'd rather be tasered, I'd rather be OC sprayed, but don't put that dog on me, man. Now, flip side, what if that was a cop and you just let your dog out on that cop that feels that same way?
It's known through the law enforcement community that drug dealers have aggressive dogs in their residence.
In your experience, have you ever seen a drug dealer using a black Labrador or a Labrador dog?
No.
This isn't a big dog problem. I think this is a cop problem.
When everybody had left, the probation officer was here, and he said, ma'am, I'm sorry, I shot your dog. But it was not like he hadn't seen the dog before. He has seen the dog before because he's my son's probation officer, and whenever he comes, the dog does come to the door, the dog does bark, the dog does run down the steps. So it wasn't like he was afraid for his life, but that's what he said. He said he shot her because he was afraid for his life. My dog is a Jack Russell mix. Didn't even weigh maybe 12 pounds. So I can't imagine how can a big man weighing almost 250 pounds be afraid of a little Jack Russell dog.
I would argue it's almost never necessary to murder the family pet, unless the family pet is a polar bear. But the average Cocker Spaniel does not pose a threat to the police.
He was in fear of imminent, serious bodily injury or death.
One of the frustrating things about these incidents is that there are usually no consequences at all. If the police officer says that he felt his life was in danger or that his safety was jeopardized by the dog and that's why he shot the dog, the chief of police or whoever's I guess in charge that are making these decisions almost always excuses the officer's actions.
If they are able to articulate that they were in fear of being attacked and injured by the family pet, by the dog, then we typically call it a good shoot, because that seems to be the only requirement.
Pembroke Pines police say the dog was biting an officer's shoes. A spokesman said even though this case is still under investigation, quote, it was a good shoot. An officer was being attacked.
A bite is really not a big deal. I really don't think that the majority of time these officers are going to get mauled. I think that's an incredible over-exaggeration.
Show me one incident anywhere in the world where a police officer has been killed by an aggressive dog. I can't find it. So why is it so commonly justified that we literally shoot 5, 6, 7 bullets at a threat that has never killed one of us in the line of duty.
You know, I thought he probably would have said, well, okay, I thought the dog was going to bite me, but he said, I'm in fear of my life. I was in fear of my life. I can't imagine. Can't imagine that.
A Blue Ash family is outraged tonight after coming home to find a police officer had shot and killed their dog. And that dog was a Chihuahua.
Some people are just naturally afraid of dogs. And I don't care if it's a pit bull or it's a 2-pound Shih Tzu. If it's furry and got teeth, it can bite you. I have never had to shoot a dog, but most people are terrified of spiders, and it doesn't matter if it's that spider that you're riding down the road in your car and that little bitty spider comes down off your sun visor. Before you think about it, you done went and killed it, you know. It just happens. These officers, they're either terrified of dogs or their training kicks in, and it happens before they realize it.
I hate to go down the road towards an absolute answer there, but I would sure have a hard time being able to hear any sort of articulation that was compelling to justify something like that. An administrator's personal feelings about that is, you gotta be kidding me, this is absolutely ridiculous. At the same time, that's gotta be balanced with the liability that's involved in essentially calling them a liar without being able to prove it and back that up as well. At some point, people in administrative positions are going to have to exercise some courage in being able to make the right choices themselves as well.
Having been in front of a jury on a dog that was very, very small, I honestly believe that size doesn't come into play a lot of the times at all. It could be a big dog, a small dog, a scary breed, a not so scary breed, a Chihuahua, an ankle biter. Doesn't really matter. I think that most people want to believe an officer and want to believe that they're really there to serve and protect, and that they had reason for the shoot.
I've seen some meaner Chihuahuas and pit bulls out there, but there's no reason, there's no justification, there's no expert witness going to come to your aid that's going to help you if you have to shoot any animal that's under 25 pounds. Because anything under 25 pounds, if you have to shoot it, go find a career move. And you can quote me on that.
He tried again to tell me that, you know, she had viciously tried to attack him. And I couldn't believe it. Then I went across the street and I said, so Kristen, did she come at you at all? And he said, no, I was in the house. He says, and I did a tape. He says, and I think you should see the tape.
The officers in that scenario submitted their reports, and then the police department actually put out a statement to the press, and then the video came out and contradicted. And that was lie after lie after lie that they told.
They said that she was overly aggressive, attacking the officers, chewing on the catch pole, and none of that is shown on the video. The officers standing around with their backs to her for probably 4 or 5 minutes, maybe longer, with no concern, no fear from her whatsoever. And they decided to move her back further into the garage. This is when they tased her. She moved further back into the garage, and they tased her again. She come running out and got the loop with a catch pole around her neck and shot her.
The poor thing was so scared. Inside the garage, when they tased her again and she come running out, you can see her claw prints inside the cement of the driveway of her trying to get away from him so desperately.
Yeah, she was caught. She wasn't going anywhere, and there was no need for it. Literally trying to get, run for her life, get out of there, get out away from this situation. And she just didn't make it.
And if it hadn't been for the video, we would have never really known, because that was, 3 or 4 officers against, whatever we would have said, Chloe would have never stood a chance.
It's very disappointing that the 3 officers involved in the Chloe shooting did not get charged with conspiracy, because they were all the same lies in each of the 3 reports.
There were casements in the couch. They were basically on top of Peyton when he was killed. So they charged Peyton rather than Peyton charging them.
Hearing it today, does that discrepancy trouble you? That the deputy says he was engaged as he entered the house, but that Peyton's body was actually found at the entrance to the kitchen?
Objection. No.
Chase ran away. He fled from them, and they hunted him down from behind and killed him.
The necropsy report, would you agree with her if she said that the trajectory or the pathway of the bullets were consistent with the dog running away from you?
I'm gonna object.
Objection.
Would I agree with that?
Yes.
No.
Are you open to any new information or facts concerning what actually happened that day, or have you reached a final conclusion in support of your deputies?
Objection. You may answer the question. I support my deputies.
The code of silence, the thin blue line, yeah, it does exist. If you develop a reputation of ratting on your fellow police officer, you know what? When you need backup one day, it's not going to show, or it's going to show 30 seconds too late, and that's all it takes. That's real. That's quite real.
I wanted to seek out reconciliation with the officer, to tell him that I forgave him. I just thought it was an honest mistake. I was thinking of different ways that we could maybe do a fundraiser for the Atlanta Police Department so that they could have the funds to do the necessary training for things like this. I thought to myself, well, if they only had the right training, they wouldn't have to make any more of these honest mistakes. And then we read Officer Brian Carswell's police report. It was just mistruth after mistruth, blatant lies.
I mean, it happened so quick. He shot my dog in the back, basically between the shoulder blades. So this police officer just shot my dog. I mean, obviously the dog was facing downward. When the supervisor arrived, instead of letting her come across the street and saying what was going on and what had happened here in front of me, he met her while the other officer stayed here. At that point, he lied immediately and said that Cisco jumped up to attack him.
The dog was coming at me. I backed up, I played myself behind the truck. The dog just jumped at me.
The dog jumped up at me, so I popped it. I yelled at that point, I was like, tell the truth, come over here and tell your story in front of me. You're lying, you're not telling the truth. The supervisor came over, asked me for my ID. She's like, you need to calm down.
Having an officer's back in the field, having an officer's back to protect him when there's physical violence does not translate into lying for an officer or covering up misconduct that was observed by others.
You see that the officers all say the same thing about this dog. He was growling, he was barking, he was aggressive. The officer had no choice. But what we had the witness that doesn't lie. We had the videotape. One of the officers who gave a statement saying how aggressive the dog was in terms of moving toward the officer, he's not even looking in the direction of the dog. Furthermore, you can see on the videotape whether the dog is growling or barking or opening its mouth at all, and he's not. You can also see on the videotape that the dog is wagging his tail, and he's running in a circle. He's not directly charging at anyone. And what the officers had was a whole lot of the same story that didn't get confirmed by the tape.
I think it's really helpful, for the rest of us and for police departments to have citizens filming their exchanges with the police. It makes us all better to know that we're going to be held accountable for our behavior.
When you see the 30-second, smartphone video clip that makes the news, When you finally see the previous 3 minutes and the 5 minutes afterwards, well, then it makes a little bit more sense why a law enforcement officer made the decisions that they made.
Police are somebody you're supposed to trust. And when they just do wrong right there in front of you and continue to lie and cover things up.
Look at this guy trying to bullshit her. Unbelievable.
You know, they called the local media and said that a dog had just attacked a police officer, and so another police officer had to be called to shoot the dog.
I'm just videotaping everything that's going down right now. We've lived across the street from this dog. We've lived across the street from this dog for a really long time, and I'm shocked that a gun was drawn on that poor dog. It lives with 3 small girls, and it is the kindest, gentlest thing. I can't imagine what happened. Wow.
And they thought it was just going to go away. Because you can't fight City Hall, right? I mean, that's what they want you to believe.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're at 8 feet. My name is John Priest. I'm a forensic analyst. I work crime scene reconstruction, death investigations, and as of late, officer shootings involving animals. Blood stains in the position of Ava support that she was here when she was shot. Now, in order to get a 30-degree shot, Ava has to actually been down in order to get the body in the position to catch the 30-degree angle at that distance. So either the officer has to be closer for his story to ring true, or Ava's in a different position in order to make that shot. If the dog were lunging, if the dog actually lunged at him, lifting up the front legs, he says the back legs were still on the ground, but you have that forward motion. The bullet is not going to stop that forward motion. The forward motion will continue. So if the dog were lunging, she should be here, not there.
These guys have seen way too many Bruce Willis films. Dogs don't just stop moving mid-air and fall to the ground, or even in most of these cases, move backwards. They keep going. A trajectory like a bullet does not stop them from moving mid-air.
It's a moving target.
So, in other words, the target may move so quickly that it outperforms the bullet, is that correct?
Outperforms the bullet?
It's faster than a speeding bullet, as they used to say on Superman.
Objection. It's a moving target.
There's nothing in the evidence that I'm seeing, in the photographs that are available and the documents that are available, that would support the dog was lunging at the time the shooting occurred. I can't completely eliminate that possibility. There's no evidence to support it beyond the best explanation, in that the dog was probably on 4 legs at the time the shooting occurred.
Going through this, there's been times where I'm like, God, am I crazy? Like, am I going crazy? So when you have somebody come, like John, you know, homicide detective, agreeing with me, it's like, finally, like, almost a sigh of relief.
It's a dog shooting, so why do we need to go through all this? We have important things to do. We have lots of calls to answer. Yet, an officer's discharged their firearm. So we need to take and make every possible step we can to ensure that we know exactly what happened there. Right, wrong, or indifferent, whether we're at fault or not, we need to know what happened there. And in this particular instance, and in many animal shootings, that's not necessarily done completely.
I was 5 feet away from Ava when she got shot. The bullet could have easily gone through Ava and ricocheted off and hit me, or if my neighbor was coming out of his house and didn't know what was going on, he could have been shot.
The velocity of bullets traveling out of guns, they can end up on rooftops and across streets very easily because of the momentum. And you can see here that there's a chip in the concrete, probably from a ricochet from the bullet fragment. Outside in the driveway, I found 4 bullet fragments, or at least lead fragments, that appeared to be from bullets. One round went through her flank and struck the animal control officer vehicle that was parked on this side of the street, but on the street. And then another one was found in front of this garage door over here. So the bullet fragments had made their way quite far.
An officer put other lives at risk to shoot the dog.
Investigators right now are working south of the Quad Cities to determine how a police officer shot and killed a woman yesterday.
He did not mean to shoot the lady. He was aiming for the dog.
In shooting a gun, it's something that is charging right at you, whether it's 20 feet away or 5 feet away. There's a very good chance you're going to miss. You're liable for that bullet that just now has missed the target and is traveling at between 1,000 and 1,300 feet per second. That has your price tag on it.
My son took her, he dug the hole and everything, and I took the mat and laid across it, and he took the stones and made the cross.
Dear Jane, a couple of months ago, we brought you home a little sister, Lucy. At first, you didn't know what to think about her, but before long, the two of you had become inseparable. She's been trying to find you all morning, and it breaks my heart to see. In August, me and Mom brought home yet another addition to our family, George, and I was so proud of the way that you loved him and looked after him.
Everyone views pets now as animal family members, not as what we in the legal profession call chattel or property. And you are fighting presumptions that are built into the law that these are not family members, that they aren't sentient beings that we love and care about, but instead that they're mere property.
Peyton had a big head, but he had this giant tongue. When he would come running up to you, I mean, his tongue was usually filled with water, and he would just lick you, mercilessly lick you. And as his head laid on the stretcher, his tongue was just hanging out, lifeless. And the moment they lifted his body up on that stretcher, I just lost it.
It's just a huge loss. It's just, it's like a piece of your heart is gone. And it can never come back, and no dog will ever replace her, and the memories of her getting shot will never go away.
I know she's not coming, but I just say it. Patches, Patches. And my boyfriend would say, why are you saying that? You know, I'm just thinking about her. I'm just thinking about her. That's it, you know. The guy over there, he has a poodle mix. They used to play together. He would come over here and just sit, and I'd tell him, but you know, Patches is not here anymore. There's nothing I can do for her but just miss her. That's it, you know. So that's what I do. I just miss her. I just miss my dog. I miss my dog.
We spent about, I guess, 2 to 3 hours digging through some pretty heavy limestone out there in dirt. And I buried him that night. He was an amazing dog. He really was.
I have to say goodbye now, sweet girl. Thank you for being the best friend that I could ever ask for. Always, Matthew.
One of the only mechanisms for real positive social change is the civil justice system, is the ability of an individual to stand up against what might be a much more powerful corporation or police department or government and say, what happened to me was wrong, and to have a jury of their peers decide that case and to have their day in court. And that's one of the most powerful things that we have as Americans for social change. My bigger purpose and my bigger interest in the cases is to bring current law more in line with our social values of today. There's a gap right now, and the job of lawyers in society is to make sure that gap doesn't exist, to exact a very high price for violations of civil rights and for harm to these animals.
It's a difficult process. Suing the government is hard. Suing the police is the hardest thing. And the likelihood of even getting a lawyer who will take your case is slim.
There's a separate doctrine known as official immunity that makes it very difficult for civil plaintiffs to actually collect for the deaths of their pets in these situations. Although the law allows for civil suits against police officers who have committed constitutional violations, the police officer can defend himself if he is able to show that a reasonable officer in his position would not have clearly believed that he was violating the law.
You can't sue the king unless the king lets you sue him. That's basically what it's about. Qualified immunity was a big thing in our case. There was no armed robbery that night anywhere in the vicinity. It was always our position that they knew enough information before the stop that they never should have done a felony stop. There was a mother seeing her 17-year-old son have assault weapons pointed at him as though they were criminal felons, but they had done absolutely nothing.
It should be the case that when there's misconduct on the part of the government visited on a citizen, that it's easier to recover, that the person whose salary your tax dollars pays owes you a greater duty.
The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals decided that based on qualified immunity, that we didn't have a right to proceed on behalf of the family for that. We were left with one excessive force charge, and that was the one with Jamie being shoved to the ground after he jumped up in shock when his dog was shot. But that's what qualified immunity does. It takes away the rights of citizens who have been wrongfully treated.
What that means ultimately is that many important cases are not brought, so that they are underreported in the media, they are underreported in the case law, and there's not enough light shined on the problems that exist.
My first thought when we picked her up was, thank God she's alive. As long as she's alive, we'll get her, fix her up with a wheelchair or anything we have to do to get her to a decent quality of life. We just wanted the police to pay for Brandy's medical bills. That's all we were looking for. They said, okay, we'll pay this much. And our vet said she's gonna need a lot more than that.
In Maryland, there's a cap for damages to a dog of $2,500, which we think is absurd, and we challenged in our lawsuit.
Roger and Sandy did a wonderful job on the stand. The video was showed multiple times. We had the vet, we had other witnesses, and the officers didn't really have anyone else on their side that was defending their actions. We did put them on the stand, and they just couldn't defend what they had done appropriately, I think, for the jury.
People think that when you win a case like this, or any case, you walk away with a check, and that's not what happens. We still have a credit card that's, maxed out because of all the stuff we put on there for her.
When this incident happened, there was no retraining, there was no change until there was a lawsuit. And it's one county, but that might be many hundreds of interactions over many years. So it may be that the Jenkinses, in being brave enough to come forward and bring this case, have saved untold numbers of families from the same thing.
I've helped organize and participated in at least 15 to 20 protests in the past year and a half. Protest brings media attention and public awareness, and it's also just showing the police that we're not going to take it anymore.
Is recording up there? Look, he's looking at him.
He's giving a bravo. I'd hate to be an officer right now.
He's gonna chase him. Oh, shit, coming up.
Oh, he's gonna knuckle up.
He's gonna throw him on the floor. Yeah. What is he doing? He's going to the ground. He's gonna throw that to the ground. Oh, he took skull.
Oh shit, the dog.
Yeah, the dog. Like he's trying to jump out too. Look, let it jump out. Oh shit. Hey, watch it. Watch it, watch it. Yeah, that dog. Yeah, that dog is smart. Get back, you get back. He's gonna miss. Good job.
We love Max! We love Max! We love Max!
Let's remember never to forget why we're here. We're here for justice for Max, amen?
He suffered, he did not die instantly. My dog kicked in the street for hours. And then the same police officer that killed him said it wasn't nothing but a dog.
We can't bring Max back, but we can definitely stand up for other dogs, and maybe this can, start a change.
Let's continue the fight. Do not stop. Whatever you do, tweet out there. Put it on YouTube.
A friend of mine asked me if I would be okay with him creating a Facebook page to get the story out, and it blew up. And we really didn't know what to think about it. It was very surprising, way beyond anything I could have ever imagined for him. And so, that outpouring of support was really, man, the only thing that would really keep me going at the time. That's when basically news stations started messaging me through Cisco's page.
New details in the fatal shooting of a pet by an APD officer.
There was constantly news vans across the street.
Michael Paxton had no idea these would be the last moments with his beloved blue heeler Cisco.
This situation made a lot of people feel like it could have been them.
I always ask the question as to why citizens don't hold their police departments more accountable. Okay, why they protest for a moment or two and then go away. I wonder why citizens don't take a more active role in police reform, in demanding that police behave a certain way, that can conduct themselves a certain way. Demanding that certain policies be evaluated, demanding that certain training take place, and demanding that investigations are done appropriately.
We have seen some criminal repercussions for these officers. We have seen here that an officer was charged with felony animal cruelty, and just the mere charging of that officer speaks volumes about the seriousness of these cases.
It's very rare that a charge like that is launched against a police officer. Officer Price was in court for 10 months. The police union lawyers were better than the district attorneys. They stated a better case, they were more aggressive, and they convinced the jury to acquit Robert Price of all charges. He was found innocent.
Fortunately, I think the message today is if you're an officer and you do the right thing and you use appropriate force, a jury will see that.
And the good news is Officer Price gets to go back to work now.
For just about everything that occurs where an officer is going to be held accountable for his or her actions, the police unions have so much power and control.
Even if an officer were fired, they fight to get the officer back on the force.
The mayor, who hires the police chief, wants the support of the union come election time.
Do you stand by your deputies because it is important for you to have their support?
Objection. What does that mean?
That means you, for instance, asked all of your deputies to vote in a vote which went 119 to 93, the Deputy Sheriff's Association to support you. It's one of the reasons that you make these premature pronouncements about their guilt or innocence, so that they know you stand by them.
That? The police chief will make a determination. If they think it's something that's going to blow over relatively soon, they'll let it blow over. Whether it's the mayor, whether it's City Hall, whether it's the City Council, they only go so far in pushing against the police union. The police unions should not be supporting those police officers who obviously act outside of policy, who obviously are committing acts of brutality.
The Criminal Investigation Division, they uncovered the fact that this same officer, Eric Hall, had shot 2 other dogs. Every 3 years in his police record, there is a dog shooting and a death.
We received a package that showed up in the mailbox one day with no stamps or return address. Officer Brooks had some abuse towards his spouse.
His son sustained injuries.
These are some of my police
Actually,
reports.
copies of the police reports. Whoever dropped it off wanted to show us that he was an aggressive or is an aggressive person.
We see in our field, unfortunately, a lot of repeat offenders. Someone comes in and they tell me a story about Officer X. Because of all the difficulties in bringing these cases, I have to turn that case down. Sometimes I get the third or fourth case, and it's the same officer. And that third or fourth case, I'm not talking to the victim. I'm talking to a widow. I'm talking to a mother. And that's because that one officer could not be stopped earlier and wasn't stopped earlier.
Sometimes affecting great social change in an area doesn't require some cataclysmic shift in legal theory or in societal thinking. Often it's something as simple and mundane as providing better training and giving law enforcement officers the tools they need to more appropriately deal with these situations.
It wasn't until I actually sat down across the table from Cindy and Mark that I realized how painful and traumatic this entire incident was to them and will continue to be.
We found a police department reaching out to help us.
We came to an agreement after doing some research that we could contract. It's kind of an advanced training module that dealt specifically with officer encounters with aggressive animals.
I had been looking for a trainer, and they had been looking for a trainer, and we both found Jim Osorio.
I'm a ex-police officer. I've gone on to training to hopefully educate law enforcement a lot better on animal issues. Her attitude will change.
Jim Osorio shows with his dog Coral that any dog will bark and look aggressive when a threat is perceived.
Every police officer needs to be trained on dogs because I guarantee they're encountering more dogs than they are terrorists out there. As soon as a dog is barking or growling, they're already thinking in their minds that I don't want to get bit, I don't want to get chewed up, I got to eliminate this threat, and that's why they're going for their gun. Just because a dog barks, just because a dog growls, shows his hair up and stuff like that, does not mean he's going to attack you. Those are all warning signs. That's how they communicate. And to understand the communication of a dog, you actually need to be trained on it.
I don't know your dog, but when I get out of my car and I have it on video now that your dog aggresses me, growling at me, teeth flaring up, all of his teeth are showing and aggressing me, what am I supposed to think? I yelled at it, I even kicked it a couple times to get away from me. Finally, it kept charging towards me, so I shot it. And yes, I did shoot it. I am sorry I shot your dog. I love dogs, but I'm not going to be bit again. Like I said, sir, last time I ended up in the ER, and I don't want to go to the ER for a dog bite.
In our training program, we have a use of force continuum section, and it's basically on animals. Police departments today already have a use of force policy on people. This one is for animals. There's officer presence. Second one is verbal commands. Soft techniques is just you're pulling a tool out, whether it's a baton, a taser. Hard techniques is you're actually using one of those tools. Lethal force, there's not much to say about lethal force. It's basically you're just pulling your sidearm out and you're shooting it. But that is the last one, and that's the one you really don't want to use.
I know I would still be holding Lily if he had had training. I know a lot of people would still be holding their babies if officers were being trained, and it is so simple. It is such a simple solution.
Our shooting of aggressive dogs went down dramatically, a significant decrease in that, because they started realizing they had options. My hopes is that you can learn what we have learned, and you can train your officers better.
The tools that are available to us have to start with their brains, their minds. The officers that are going to make that decision to shoot a dog when it really is not justified, and they know it, and everybody else knows it.
One individual Buffalo police officer has shot 26 dogs alone since 2011 and killed all but one of those dogs.
That issue is not going to be solved with dog training. That's a cop issue, and that's a hiring issue, and that's an integrity issue. And if we don't continue to focus on keeping integrity high in law enforcement, then we deserve to lose public trust as well.
is for the officers too, because you know what? Frank Brown did not go home, crack open a beer, and start laughing and telling his buddies how he killed our border collie, Lily, and heard us screaming and thought it was funny. He didn't do that. I don't know the man, but I can't believe he did that. He went home to his wife. He was horrified at what he did. He hadn't been trained to do anything else but that. And I am absolutely certain that he has his own instant replays of that day.
Based on the training you received after the Calvo incident, what is that understanding that you have now about the behavior of the dog before you shot it?
Objection, you can answer.
That at the time, it was being aggressive because its teeth were showing, but it also might have been defending its territory or being territorial or scared, because now, knowing the facts, Yarborough and Sagan were at the other end of the room as we were coming in the other room. So from that training, I learned that the dog might have been cornered and was just trying to defend itself.
The most sweeping and comprehensive way of addressing this problem is to pass legislation at the state level that requires all law enforcement officers within that state to get a certain basic minimum amount of training.
I know that probably more than 1 million Coloradans have dogs at home.
So I was watching a local TV station report about a dog being shot, and I kind of cried when I watched that video, and then I got on the phone and I called my sheriff and I asked him about it, and he said yes, that this is a problem, that there's problems with some law enforcement departments unnecessarily shooting dogs. As I dug into the issue, I discovered over 40 separate dog shootings in the last 5 years in Colorado, and only 3 of them involved a violent crime call, and only 1 of them involved narcotics. Part of what motivated me to pass this bill is as I met the victims and heard their stories, it became a crusade. It became something that I had to do. I had to pass this bill. I had to get this going. Almost everybody in the law enforcement community was opposed to the bill. So one of the things that police departments began to say to me was, well, you have no idea the situations that we have to walk into. And I said, well, to a certain extent I do. I served with the Army in Afghanistan. There were many dogs that came up to us that were stray dogs. They would bark at our unit, and yet as soon as we befriended them, they would be just like any dog that I've ever met in America. And our unit never shot a single dog while we were there. So I kept working on the bill. I kept seeking the input of law enforcement departments, and eventually one law enforcement department after another stopped fighting me on the bill and started helping me write the bill. The Colorado Sheriff's Association voted in their statewide meeting, and vast majority of the sheriffs voted to endorse the bill.
I recommend to this committee a yes vote. I respectfully request that you move this matter forward.
My heart got so big inside me, and I said, oh my gosh, we're really going to pass this bill. All of a sudden, people at the Capitol who gave my bill no chance of passing started saying, maybe we can work this bill out. And then I introduced the bill, and dog owners from all across Colorado just brought their own personal dog to the Capitol. We had a big rally.
I am State Senator David Palmer, and I'm a Republican. It's my honor to carry this bill with Senator Lucia Guzman, who's a Democrat from Denver. 2 months of working with stakeholders, hundreds of emails, meetings, phone calls, and now we're here at this day. The day when this bill will receive its first hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee this afternoon. You have started a true grassroots movement. So today we make our mark. I want you to join me in scratching the grass All right?
We had almost every kind of breed that you can imagine out there on the Capitol steps. They were all walking around and sniffing each other, and it was just a great dog day at the Capitol.
Please join with me. Let everyone inside the Capitol, Governor Hickenlooper and all the legislators hear you right now. We love our dogs. We love
And I'm really honored that they brought us in as part of that to give our testimony before the state legislators.
I was able to successfully and harmlessly deal with these dog charges just to deliver a small package. Sure, the dogs sometimes scared me, and I was none too happy with the owners at times. But harming a dog was unthinkable. Why? Because my employer UPS held me to a high standard of professional conduct.
So I spoke in front of the Senate and just told the story about what happened to Ava and what happened to our family.
I'm not here to speak against police officers, but to help bring the community back to trusting in them. The story kills me every time I tell it, but I will tell it a million times if it saves the life of one family member. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry for your loss.
If her loss of life can save others, if she could speak, if she go, yeah, that'd be good with her.
Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Madam President. On behalf of all of our four-legged Coloradans,
It passed with every senator in the Senate voting for it, so all 35 senators in the state Senate voted for it. It went over to the House, and all 65 representatives in the House voted for it. And then we had a special signing ceremony with the governor, and the governor signed it into law. And it's the first law of its kind, and I would love to see this bill passed in all 50 states eventually.
At least Chloe didn't die for nothing. Can't bring her back, but at least, even in the end, being the kind dog, the wonderful dog she is, she still accomplished something after her death by giving all these other people a chance to open their eyes and see what's really going on.
I think it also helps my girls. I just tell them, it's terrible what happened when we all miss Ava, but I tell them she'll always be in our hearts, but, something good is coming out of it.
The bill is called House Bill 803. We just want people to talk about it, just for it to not be one of those closeted violent acts that you only know about it once it happens to you, like Kelly and I.
We're seeing some activity in Illinois. We're seeing some success in Texas.
This is what needs to happen, and this is what everyone that I'm become a family member of is trying to teach others to do.
Well, the Colorado Dog Protection Act is really the beginning of the discussion. With the full cooperation of law enforcement, I think that other state legislatures could write much more elaborate bills that go after all of the various aspects of the problem.
Yesterday, the Internal Affairs investigation ruled Officer Brian Carswell's shooting as being justified.
Since Jane's tragic death just 5 months ago, we've dealt with much of our grief by seeking justice for Jane. We've thrown ourselves into gaining public awareness, House Bill 803. All of these activities have kept the pain at bay. I was going in worrying, thinking, what if the bill doesn't pass? It's like everything that we've done is not going to mean anything. But in fact, that's kind of the opposite. Now we'll have a whole year to strategize and make the bill what we really want it to be.
What I'd like for you now to do is we're going to take a minute of silence. And I just want you to think about Jane and about all the other dogs that have been shot and killed for being a dog. And just let's take a moment, please.
It's good. It's promising. It's good that the public can come along and law enforcement can be here, and I already had people approaching me, that were curious of why I was here. I wanted to hear the other side of this, get the other side of the story. There is a cause, and I think as long as they stick together and we can all come together, they'll make it happen.
This is a grassroots movement now that is just going to go bigger and bigger and bigger. And I know that one of these days, the bill will pass.
Cops and citizens, it's the same feelings, I'm a dog person, man.
Every single time we went in there, we never buckled, we never turned our heads, we never walked with our heads down. We held our heads high, and we knew that it was right to fight for that dog.
You can't get your dogs back. No amount, no amount of money or even a day in court is going to do that. But what you can do is defeat the lies and actually tell the story as it happened.
You can wish hate upon the person who killed your baby, but that doesn't accomplish anything except a whole lot more pain.
The quiet was overwhelming for us. Just coming in the house, seeing the empty water bowl, not having a dog here was like torture.
This is Pancho. This is my new cattle dog. Come here, Panch. High five. Oh, you're a good boy. There's so many qualities about him that I like, and even though he's different, he's very special.
You brought a lot of joy back into our lives.
So we went to the pound and we rescued Sierra. Sierra is a German Shepherd, Australian Shepherd mix, and Sierra was 3 days from being euthanized. Sierra's a member of our family.
I have two wonderful dogs. I have a chocolate Labrador called Sadie, and I have a very mean Chihuahua called Jasmine.
We had mutts. I guess we got them from the pound. Today you'd call them rescues, but I had a variety growing up and a lot of fun with them.
There's no way I would walk out in the wilderness for 3 hours snowshoeing in 30 inches of snow if my dog didn't like doing it.
The funny thing about Vizslas is they still have it in their blood that they are royal, and that the purpose of us is to be their servants and to take care of them and to love them and pet them all day long. And they bring so much love into our lives.
People have been posting about him for a month. Nobody could catch him because he was just so shy. He was a big golden retriever, chow mix, and somebody spotted him one day and the right person called me, and I went out there with a pound of turkey and just sat in the woods. It was Valentine's Day. Named him Valentino.
The one I actually take around to the course is Coral. She's a female German Shepherd,
And I use her, I don't want to say dummy dog, but she's my mannequin in the courses.
The reason we named her Gizmo is because of the movie Gremlins. Her face looked just like, well, the character Gizmo. Not after the gremlin had eaten food after midnight. This is the one Gizmo who never turned to the true gremlin. What is it, a Mogwai?
At the bottom of my feet right now is Ike, who has disrupted this video a number of times with his farting and snorting and every other bodily function that he has initiated during the process of this filming.
He's about a 110-pound German Shepherd, so he's a big boy. He's my cuddle bug.
And then I have a rescue dog, which is part lab, part pit bull. And she's my cuddle bug. And I'm sorry. I had to go there, man. I'm sorry. I have a ferret, too. He's pretty cool. Mr. Jangles. Yeah. He has a leash and a harness, and he has a blue and black leash for law enforcement. I tell people we have budget constraints.